Odysseus strings his bow. Penelope, inspired by Athena, goes to get Odysseus' bow that only he is strong enough to use. She brings it down from where it was being stored. That radiant woman, once she reached her suitors, drawing her glistening veil across her cheeks, paused now where a column propped the sturdy roof, with one of her loyal handmaids stationed at either side, and delivered an ultimatum to her suitors. Listen to me, my overbearing friends, you who plague this palace night and day, drinking, eating us out of house and home, with the lord and master absent, gone so long. The only excuse that you can offer is your zest, to win me as your bride. So to arms, my gallants, here is the prize at issue, right before you look. I set before you the great bow of King Odysseus now. The hand that can string this bow with greatest ease, that shoots an arrow clean through all 12 axes. He is the man I follow, yes, forsaking this house, where I was once a bride, this gracious house so filled with the best that life can offer. I shall always remember it, that I know, even in my dreams. So she's saying that whoever can string this bow and then shoot an arrow perfectly straight through all those little tiny holes in the axe head, she'll marry him. But this bow is so stiff that no one is strong enough to string it except Odysseus, because he's a warrior, and he has the best aim. She turned to Eumaeus, ordered the good swineherd now to set the bow and the gleaming iron axes out before the suitors. He broke into tears as he received them, laid them down. The cowherd wept too when he saw his master's bow, but Antinous wheeled on both and let them have it. Yokels, fools! You can't tell night from day. You mawkish idiots, why are you sniveling here? You're stirring up your mistress. Isn't she drowned in grief already? She's lost her darling husband. Sit down, eat in peace, or take your snuffling out of doors. But leave that bow right here, our crucial test that makes or breaks us all. No easy game, I wager, to string his polished bow. Not a soul in the crowd can match Odysseus. What a man he was. I saw him once. I remember him to this day, though I was young and foolish way back then. And this is not the same Antinous as we talked about earlier. Some of these names are repeated. So this is a different Antinous. This is a suitor, not the king that we talked about earlier. So just so you're clear, it's a different character. Smooth talk, but deep in the suitor's heart, his hopes were bent on stringing the bow and shooting through the axes. Antinous fated to be the first man to taste an arrow whipped from great Odysseus' hands. The king he mocked, at ease in the king's house, egging comrades on to mock him too. So that's foreshadowing. This guy is the first one that's going to taste an arrow whipped from great Odysseus' hands. So he'll be the first to be shot with an arrow by Odysseus. Foreshadowing should go in your figurative language notes, and you should write that down. And make sure you're including all these events and any new characters or any characters you're missing. As we go through, you should be adding these events. Amazing, Prince Telemachus waded in with a laugh. Zeus up there has robbed me of my wits. My own dear mother, sensible as she is, says she'll marry again, forsake our house. That means leave our house. And look at me, laughing for all I'm worth, giggling like some fool. Step up, my friends, here's the prize at issue, right before you look. A woman who has no equal in all Achaean country, neither in holy Pylos, nor in Argos or Mycenae, not even in Ithaca itself, or the loamy mainland. You know it well. Why sing my mother's praises? Come, let the games begin. No dodges, no delays, no turning back from the stringing of the bow. We'll see who wins, we will. I'll even take a crack at the bow myself. If I string it and shoot through all the axes, I'd worry less if my noble mother left our house with another man, and left me here behind, man enough at last to win my father's splendid prizes. So, Telemachus knows what's going on. He knows it's Odysseus, and he sees how this is going to happen. And he's saying, it'll work out, I guess, but I can't believe my mother is doing this. With that, he leapt to his feet and dropped his bright red cloak, slipping the sword and sword belt off his shoulders. First, he planted the axes, digging a long trench, one for all, and trued them all to a line, and then tamped the earth to bed them. So he's making them perfectly straight, is what that means. Wonder took the revelers looking on, his work so firm, precise, though he'd never seen the axes ranged before. He stood at the threshold, poised to try the bow. 3 times he made it shudder, straining to bend it. 3 times his power flagged, but his hopes ran high. He'd string his father's bow and shoot through every iron, and now struggling with all his might for the 4th time, he would have strung the bow, but Odysseus shook his head and stopped him short, despite his tensing zeal. God help me, the inspired prince cried out. Must I be a weakling, a failure all my life? Unless I'm just too young to trust my hands, to fight off any man who rises up against me. Come, my betters, so much stronger than I am. Try the bow and finish off the contest. So Telemachus tries and he can't do it. He's really close. He makes the bow shake when he's trying to string it because you have to pull the ends closer together to make the string super tight so you can shoot your arrow. So if you've never strung a bow, that's how it works. You're taking each end and you're tying a string, and it should be, like I said, very tight. And so you'd have to bend the top to the bottom to hook the string around it. And Telemachus is close, but Odysseus basically gives him the signal to stop. He, Telemachus, propped his father's weapon on the ground, tilting it up against the polished, well-hung doors, and resting a shaft aslant the bow's fine horn. Then back he went to the seat that he had left. "Up, friends," Antinous called, taking over. One man after another, left to right, starting from where the steward pours the wine. So Antinous urged, and all agreed. The first man up was Leodes, Onup's son, a seer who could see their futures in the smoke, who always sat by the glowing wine bowl well back, the one man in the group who loathed the reckless ways, appalled by all their outrage. So Leodes actually tells the future, and he can do it in the smoke, and it says he's the only one who actually doesn't like the way they act. His turn first. So the men all try, and they cannot bend the bow. So we'll skip on to the next section. But now the king's two men, the cowherd and the swineherd, had slipped out of the palace side by side, and great Odysseus left the house to join them. Once they were past the courtyard and the gates, he probed them deftly, surely. "Cowherd, swineherd, what, shall I blurt this out or keep it to myself?" "No, speak out. My heart inside me says so. How far would you go to fight beside Odysseus? Say he dropped like that from a clear blue sky and a god brought him back. Would you fight for the suitors or your king? Tell me how you feel inside your hearts." "Father Zeus," the trusty cowherd shouted, "bring my prayer to pass. Let the master come. Some god guide him now. You'd see my power, my fighting arms in action." Eumaeus echoed his prayer to all the gods, that their wise king would come home again. So they both are saying they're still loyal to Odysseus. Certain at least that these two were loyal to the death, Odysseus reassured them quickly. "I'm right here in the flesh myself, and home at last, after bearing 20 years of brutal hardship. Now I know that of all my men, you two alone long for my return. From the rest I've heard not one real prayer that I come back again." So he knows these are the only two that he can trust and that are loyal to him. "So now I'll tell you what's in store for you. If a god beats down the lofty suitors at my hands, I'll find you wives, both of you, grant you property, sturdy houses beside my own, and in my eyes you'll be comrades to Prince Telemachus, brothers from them on. Come, I'll show you something, living proof. Know me for certain, put your minds at rest. This scar, look, where a boar's white tusk gored me years ago, hunting on Parnassus, Autolycus' sons and I." With that, pushing back his rage, he revealed the great scar, and the men gazed at it, scanned it, knew it well, broke into tears, and threw their arms around their master, lost in affection, kissing his head and shoulders. And so Odysseus kissed their heads and hands. And I want to remind you, and pause here, this is a cultural thing. It would be a greeting. It was very common culturally to greet someone that way. So there's nothing weird about that. They're just excited to see each other, and they express more emotion in this culture. Now the sun would have set upon their tears if Odysseus had not called a halt to himself. "No more weeping coming out of the house. A man might see us. Tell the men inside. Let's slip back in singly, not in a pack. I'll go first. You're next. Here's our signal. When all the rest in there, our lordly friends, are all dead against my having the bow and good Eumaeus, carry the weapon down the hall and put it in my hands. Then tell the serving women to lock the snugly fitted doors to their own rooms. If anyone hears from there the jolting blows and groans of men caught in our huge net, not one of them show her face. Sit tight, keep to our weaving, not a sound." So tell the women to go basically hide and not come out no matter what. "You, my good Philoetius, here are your orders. Shoot the bolt of the courtyard's outer gate. Lock it. Lash it fast." So they're going to lock the gate to the outside so no one can escape. With that command, the master entered his well-constructed house, and back he went to the stool that he had left. The king's two men in turn slipped in as well. Just now Eurymachus held the bow in his hands, turning it over tip to tip before the blazing fire to heat the weapon. So that would make it like softer. So that's his idea, is to make it softer. Not burn it, but make it softer. But he failed to bend it even so, and the suitor's high heart groaned to bursting. I want you to add that's figurative language, that's personification. His heart groaned to bursting. "A black day," he exclaimed in wounded pride. "A blow to myself, a blow to each man here. It's less the marriage that mortifies me now. That's galling too, but lots of women are left. Some in Seagirt, Ithaca, some in other cities. What breaks my heart is the fact that we fall so short of great Odysseus' strength we cannot string his bow. A disgrace to ring in the ears of men to come." So then Odysseus mocks the men for trying to marry his wife. He mocks them for wanting to marry Penelope. He doesn't admit she's his wife. They become angry and want their weapons, but they cannot get to them because, remember, Telemachus went and locked them up. They do not want Odysseus to take his bow. The men mock Odysseus and threaten him that if he strings his bow, they'll attack him. Antinous, watchful Penelope, stepped in. How impolite it would be, how wrong to scant whatever guest Telemachus welcomes into his house. You really think if the stranger trusts so to his hands and strength that he strings Odysseus' great bow, he'll take me home and claim me as his bride? He never dreamed of such a thing, I'm sure. Don't let that ruin the feast for any reveler here. Unthinkable. Nothing could be worse. So Penelope is saying, this man doesn't want to marry me, he just wants to try. Don't be ridiculous. Polybus' son, Eurymachus, had an answer. And I want to pause real quick. The reason it says their father is because we have another Eurymachus, and we have another Antinous. They say the father's name because it's like saying their last name. It defines who they are. Wise Penelope, daughter of Icarius, do we really expect the man to wed you? Unthinkable, I know. But we do recoil at the talk of men and women. One of the island's meaner sort will mutter, look at that riffraff courting a queen's wife. Weaklings, look, they can't even string his bow, but along came this beggar, dripping out of the blue, strung his bow with ease and shot through all the axes. Gossip will fly, we'll hang our heads in shame. So they're scared of being, people judging them. So they're being too proud, they have too much pride. Shame, alert Penelope protested. How can you hope for any public fame at all? You who disgrace, devour a great man's house and home. Why hang your heads in shame over next to nothing? Our friend here is a strapping, well-built man and claims to be the son of a noble father. Come, hand him the bow now. Let's just see. I tell you this, and I'll make good my word. If he strings the bow and Apollo grants him glory, I'll dress him in a shirt and cloak and handsome clothes. I'll give him a good sharp lance to fight off men and dogs, give him a two-edged sword and sandals for his feet, and send him off wherever he desires. Mother, poised Telemachus broke in now, my father's bow. No Achaean on earth has more right than I to give it or withhold it as I please. So he's saying, you can't give that away, it's mine. Of all the wars in Ithaca's rocky heights, or the islands facing Elis grazed by horses, not a single one will force or thwart my will. Even if I decide to give our guest this bow, a gift outright to carry off himself. So, mother, go back to your quarters, tend your own tasks, the distaff and the loom, and keep the women working hard as well. As for the bow now, men will see that to that, but I most of all. I hold the reins of power in this house. So this will be a moment where Telemachus is growing up, and this is a theme, growing up, because we all grow up no matter what culture we're in. So I need to write that down and explain this. He's not being hateful. He's finally taking ownership and being a man and saying, Mom, I'm going to handle this. Now remember, the reason he wants her out is because he doesn't want his mother in the middle of a battle. He's trying to keep her safe. Astonished, she withdrew to her own room. She took to heart the clear good sense in what her son had said. Climbing up to the lofty chamber with her women, she fell to weeping for Odysseus, her beloved husband, till watchful Athena sealed her eyes with welcome sleep. And now the loyal swineherd had lifted up the bow and taking it toward the king, when all the suitors burst out in an ugly uproar through the palace. Brash young bullies, this or that one heckling. Where on earth are you going with that bow? You grubby swineherd, are you crazy? The speedy dogs you reared will eat your corpse. Out there with your pigs, out in the cold alone. If only Apollo and all the gods shine down on us. So they're all insulting him. Eumaeus froze in his tracks and put down the bow, panicked by every outcry in the hall. Telemachus shouted too from the other side, full of threats. Carry on with the bow, old boy. If you serve too many masters, you'll soon suffer. Look sharp, or I'll pelt you back to your farm with flying rocks. I may be younger than you, but I'm much stronger. If only I had that edge and fists and brawn over all this courting crowd, I'd soon dispatch them, licking their wounds at last. Clear of our palace, where they plot their vicious plots. His outburst sends them all into gales of laughter, so they're making fun of Telemachus, like, oh yeah, right, you're gonna hurt somebody. Blithe and oblivious, that dissolved their pique against the prince. The swineherd took the bow, carried it down the hall to his ready waiting king, and standing by him, placed it in his hands. Then he called the nurse aside and whispered, Good Euryclea, Telemachus commands you now to lock the snugly fitted doors to your own rooms. If anyone hears from there the jolting blows and groans of men caught in our huge net, not one of you show your face. Sit tight. Keep to your weaving. Not a sound. That silenced the old nurse. She barred the doors that led from the long hall. The cowherd quietly bounded out of the house to lock the gates of the high stockade. Under the portico lay a cable, ship's tough gear. He lashed the gates with this, then slipped back in, and ran and sat on the stool that he'd just left, eyes riveted on Odysseus. Now he held the bow in his own hands, turning it over tip to tip, testing it this way, that way, fearing worms had bored through the weapon's horn, with the master gone abroad. A suitor would glance at his neighbor, jeering, taunting. "Look at our connoisseur of bows." We're going to skip down because this slide actually repeats itself, so skip down. He snatched a winged arrow lying bare on the board. The rest still bristled deep inside the quiver, soon to be tasted by all the feasters there. That's more foreshadowing, so going to be tasted by the feasters. They're going to be shot with those arrows. Setting shaft on the hand grip, drawing the notch and bowstring back, right from his stool, just as he sat, that aiming straight and true, he let fly and never missing an axe from the first axe handle, clean on through the last and out, the shaft with its weighted brazen head shot free. So Odysseus was able to string the bow, and then he shot an arrow straight through all the axe heads. Perfect shot. "My son," Odysseus looked to Telemachus and said, "your guest sitting here in your house has not disgraced you. No, missing the mark. Look, and no long labor spent to string the bow. My strength's not broken yet, not quite so frail as the mocking suitors thought. But the hour has come to serve our masters right. Supper in broad daylight, then to the other revels, song and dancing, all that crowns a feast." So he's saying he did it, and he's like, "I didn't embarrass you," and he's like, let's party now. He paused the warning nod, and at that sign, Prince Telemachus, son of King Odysseus, girding his sharp sword on, clamping hand to spear, took his stand by a chair that flanked his father, his bronze spear point glinting now like fire.